Thank you, Faith. That was beautiful. And thank you, everyone, for sending in your pictures, helping us make this amazing wreath. Where I am, God is. Where I cry, God is the comfort. Where I seek, God is the answer. Where I move, God is the power that helps me move in and out and through me. As me, God is. When I found New Thought and started studying the New Thought teachings and unity teachings, I found this song by Faith Rivera. And when I heard it, it transformed the way I saw God. I interacted with the divine and changed my whole paradigm of the scriptures and the metaphors and the teachings of my childhood. I got to rise up, to lift myself up, and transform my ideas about the divine. But it's interesting here at Easter to be studying these stories, to be looking at them with fresh eyes. The story of the Israelites is really fascinating when you look at it from our modern perspective. The story of Passover. So they sheltered in place to avoid a plague. And they were there cowering over as death passed by. After they were freed, they went on a journey to find the promised land, the new Eden, the new earth. And we've been talking about what is it that we want to build after this time of sheltering in place and separation and distancing. Can we create something new? And what is it that we really want out of life? Take the stories of Jesus from the Gospels. After his crucifixion, the disciples were all cowering in their homes, afraid to go out for fear that they too would be arrested and killed. It was only the women who had the courage to go out and to anoint Jesus' body on the third day. And the women who first discovered that the tomb was empty and then found Jesus. But they didn't recognize him. They didn't know who he was at first, for he was so transformed that he was unrecognizable. Could we do that? Could we transform ourselves as to be unrecognizable? I know that when I started on this spiritual journey that I'm continuing down this path on, that some of my friends didn't know what to make of me. What more could we do after this pandemic to transform ourselves so that we are unrecognizable from our old self, from the things we used to believe, hold, fight for, demand? What if there's something greater, something bigger, when we let all that stuff go? As you know, Jesus is not the only resurrection myth in scriptures. There's Osiris, who was resurrected from the dead. There's, of course, the phoenix. Jonah is swallowed by a whale and lives inside the whale's belly for 3 days and 3 nights before he's spit back out. And Jesus. All these figures are transformed by their experience in the tomb, in the silence. And I can't help but think that this time for us is our period of transformation. When Jesus is on the cross in the Gospels, there's a moment when he's about to die, and the curtain that separates the Holy of Holies from the rest of the population is torn in two, ripped completely apart. Now, to understand what that means, is to know that the Holy of Holies was a place that only the high priest could go, and the place where the Israelites thought God actually lived. It was the dwelling place of God, and no one else had access to it other than the holiest of priests. But in that moment of Jesus' death, the Gospels are telling us that we all now can enter the Holy of Holies, that the separation is ripped apart, and we can all be one with God. Wherever we are, God is. Wherever I stand, God is completely around me. When I was a kid, God lived in the church. God lived in the sacraments. God was in the very rituals that I were taught as the representation of God here on earth, the actual church, the holy church. And as I've grown up and as I've learned, I've awakened, I've risen beyond that childish understanding of spirituality to the one where God is everywhere. God is the very thought we think, and that there is no separation, no distance at all between me and the divine, between me and God, between me and you, between any of us. So these ideas of nationalities and borders and races and people that belong and people that don't, the us and them, has to go away. Because if we're all in God, as God, then there's no difference. And everything is possible. Unity teaches, and I believe, that the Scriptures, the Bible, is a story of human evolution, a rising in consciousness, a deeper understanding. But we also teach and believe that it's also the story of our own personal evolution, our evolution of consciousness. So when I was a kid, I thought God was in the sacrament. I thought God was in the ritual. And today, as an adult, I've woken up to the reality that I am one with God. And with that knowledge, with that understanding, all becomes possible. What if this time was for us, not against us? What if this whole pandemic was for our unfoldment as a species? That how we take care of each other, how we treat each other matters. And it all exists in consciousness. How we understand what is whole, the whole of the earth, the holy of the divine. When I was a little older, I was taught some phrases about God. God was omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, the meaning that God was everywhere present. He knew everything, sort of like the Santa Claus God. But as I've grown up and as I've studied, I know that God is all presence, omniscience, omnipresent, all presence. So not that he's watching, but that he is the very energy of us being able to see and understand and touch each other with our presence. Omnipotence, all power, the power that moves us, that allows us to breathe, to actually get out of bed, to make things. That is the God substance. The wholeness of God. The holiness of God. And when we understand that God is all power, this moment that we're living in is empowered. That we can shape the future by how we interact with what's happening in life. Are we complaining? We moaning, bemoaning our fate? Or are we actively doing everything we can to live in this moment, to be the force, the power of the divine in the moment, to reach out to others, to make a difference, to stay at home and make a difference in the world, knowing that we're going to get through this, then taking our time to decide what it is we want to create. Taking the time to say, what does the world look like after COVID-19? What am I like after COVID-19? Now, we can't know all the answers. Just as Mary and the women and the disciples couldn't recognize Jesus because we've not been there before. We don't know. But we can set our sights on a goal. We can set our sights on a high cause, noble calling. And we can walk forward towards that and make a difference in the world. Because everything we do matters. Everything you and I say, do, and everything we are changes the world. So there's one more song that I love, and Faith sings it so beautifully. It's called Holy Now. It's about our journey from understanding that God was in one place to God everywhere present, all presence, all knowledge, all power. So I'm going to invite Faith back and give you Faith Rivera singing Holy Now. Namaste.